Maria Castellanos' feet were bleeding. She had been walking for 3 days straight through the Arizona desert, and her old leather shoes were falling apart. Every step hurt, but she kept moving forward. She was only 17 years old, but she had learned one important lesson in life. Sometimes running away is the bravest thing you can do. 3 days ago, Maria had escaped from her stepfather's ranch. The man was cruel and violent, and after her mother died last winter, there was nobody left to protect her. So one night when he was drunk and sleeping, Maria took a canvas sack, filled it with some bread and dried meat, grabbed her mother's silver cross, and ran. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stay there anymore. Now she was lost somewhere in Apache territory. Every settler in Arizona knew that walking into Apache land was dangerous. People told stories about what happened to outsiders who wandered too far from the towns. But Maria had a different way of thinking about danger. She figured that maybe the unknown danger was better than the certain danger she left behind. At least out here she had a chance. The desert sun was brutal. Maria's lips were cracked and bleeding from thirst. Her long dark hair was full of dust, and her dress was torn in several places from walking through thorny bushes. She had finished her water yesterday and her throat felt like sandpaper. When she heard the sound of running water somewhere ahead, she didn't even think about being careful. She just followed the sound. The stream was in a hidden canyon surrounded by tall red rocks and cottonwood trees. Maria practically ran to the water's edge and fell to her knees. She cupped her hands and drank desperately, the cold water feeling like heaven on her burning throat. She splashed water on her face and neck, crying with relief. For the first time in days, she felt like maybe she would survive after all. That's when she heard the small sound behind her, a twig snapping. Maria froze, water dripping from her hands. She turned around slowly, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Was it an animal, a snake? Or worse, had someone followed her? Behind a cottonwood tree, about 20 feet away, stood a little girl. She looked about 10 years old with long black hair and traditional Apache clothing. But there was something different about her. The girl was staring in Maria's direction, but not quite at her. Her eyes had a strange cloudy white film over them. The child was blind. Maria's fear melted away instantly. She had expected warriors or wild animals, not a small blind girl. The child stood very still, her head tilted to one side, listening. Maria realized the girl was trying to figure out who or what was by the stream. She was probably scared too. Moving very slowly and carefully, Maria reached into her canvas sack. She only had a little food left, maybe enough for 2 more days if she was lucky. But looking at this small blind girl standing alone in the forest, Maria couldn't help herself. She broke off half of her remaining bread and stood up carefully. In her softest voice, Maria spoke in Spanish. Her mother had taught her to speak gently to frightened things, whether they were animals or people. She said hello and told the girl she had some food to share. The blind girl couldn't understand the Spanish words, but she understood the tone. She understood kindness. Maria walked forward slowly, making sure her footsteps were loud enough for the girl to hear her coming. She didn't want to startle her. When she got close, she gently took the girl's hand and placed the bread in her palm. The child's fingers closed around the food, and for a moment she just stood there, surprised. Then the little girl smiled. It was the most beautiful smile Maria had ever seen. The child lifted the bread to her nose and smelled it, then took a small, careful bite. Her smile grew bigger. She said something in Apache that Maria didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. "Thank you." Maria smiled back, even though she knew the girl couldn't see it. Somehow it felt like the right thing to do. She sat down on a rock near the stream and gestured for the girl to sit beside her. The blind child hesitated for just a moment, then carefully made her way to the rock and sat down. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the water and sharing the bread. Maria didn't know it yet, but someone was watching them from the ridge above. A tall Apache man with sharp eyes and a stone-hard face stood hidden among the rocks. He had been tracking Maria since sunrise, following her footprints and watching her every move. His hand rested on the knife at his belt, and he had been ready to chase her away from his people's territory or make sure she never told anyone about their hidden camp. But now, watching this strange white girl share her food with his daughter, the man's hand slowly moved away from his knife. His daughter Kaya had been blind for over a year. Since his wife died 2 winters ago, he had been raising Kaya alone, and it was the hardest thing he had ever done. The child was scared all the time now, afraid to explore, afraid to trust anyone except him. But here she was, sitting with a complete stranger, smiling like she used to smile before the fever took her sight. The man, whose name was Chief Nantaje, felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize what it was. Hope. For 5 more minutes he watched the white girl and his daughter sitting by the stream. The girl wasn't trying to lead Kaya anywhere or control her. She wasn't talking too much or treating the child like she was broken. She was just being there with her, peaceful and kind. When Kaya finished the bread, the white girl gave her a drink from the stream, guiding her hands to the water carefully. Chief Nantaje made a decision. He would let the white girl leave safely. He wouldn't chase her away or hurt her, but he would keep watching. Something told him this wouldn't be the last time she came to this stream, and something told him that maybe, just maybe, this stranger who appeared out of the desert might be exactly what his daughter needed. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Maria finally stood up. She knew she should find shelter before the day got too hot. She touched Kaya's shoulder gently in goodbye and started to walk away. The blind girl called out something in Apache, her voice sad. Maria turned back and smiled even though Kaya couldn't see it. In simple Spanish, Maria told her, "I'll come back tomorrow. I promise." She didn't know if the child understood her words, but somehow she thought maybe Kaya understood her heart. And up on the ridge, hidden among the rocks, Chief Nantaje heard that promise too. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he would watch again. Tomorrow he would see if this white girl kept her word. In the Apache way, a person's word meant everything. And if this stranger came back like she promised, well, that would tell him something important about who she really was. Chief Nantaje couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his shelter, staring up at the stars through the smoke hole, thinking about the white girl and his daughter. For over a year now, since Kaya lost her sight to the fever, he had watched her world grow smaller and smaller. The confident, laughing child who used to run freely through the camp had become quiet and fearful. She stayed close to him always, afraid to explore or play like she used to. He understood her fear. The world was dangerous when you couldn't see it, but watching her lose her joy had been like watching her die slowly, piece by piece. And today, for just a few minutes by the stream, he had seen a glimpse of the old Kaya, the girl who smiled, the girl who trusted. When the sun rose, Nantaje was already awake. He told his warriors he was going hunting, which wasn't exactly a lie. He was hunting, just not for deer. He wanted to see if the white girl would keep her promise. Most white people, in his experience, didn't keep their word to Apache. They made treaties and broke them. They promised peace and brought war, but something about this girl felt different. He reached the ridge above the stream just as the first light touched the canyon. And there, already sitting by the water, was the white girl, Maria. He had heard Kaya say her name yesterday, repeating it carefully like she was saving something precious. Maria looked terrible, if he was being honest. Her clothes were more torn than yesterday, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She probably hadn't slept well, sleeping out in the open with no fire and no shelter, but she had come back. She had kept her word. Nantaje settled into his watching position and waited. He didn't have to wait long. Like yesterday, Kaya appeared from the trees. But today was different. Today, Kaya wasn't hesitant or careful. She walked straight toward the stream with confidence, like she knew exactly where she was going. Because she did. She knew Maria would be there. The white girl stood up when she heard Kaya coming, and the smile on her face was genuine. She called out a greeting in Spanish, and even though Kaya couldn't understand the words, she smiled too. They sat together by the stream, and Nantaje watched as Maria shared her food again. She was giving away what little she had, even though she clearly needed it herself. For the next hour, something beautiful happened. Maria started showing Kaya things using touch. She took long pieces of grass and showed Kaya how to braid them together, guiding her fingers through the pattern. When Kaya got confused, Maria would patiently take her hands and show her again. No frustration. No impatience, just gentle teaching. Then Maria did something that made Nantaje's throat tighten. She started singing. It was a Spanish song, soft and sweet, probably something her own mother had taught her. She sang it several times, and by the 4th time, Kaya was humming along, learning the melody. His daughter was learning a song. She was creating something with her hands. She was laughing. Nantaje felt something wet on his face and realized with shock that he was crying. He, a war chief who had fought in dozens of battles, who had led his people through impossible hardships, was crying while watching a white girl teach his daughter to braid grass. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. For over a year, he had tried everything to help Kaya adjust to her blindness. He had been patient and loving and protective. But maybe he had been too protective. Maybe what Kaya needed wasn't just safety. Maybe she needed someone who saw her not as a blind girl who needed protecting, but as a regular girl who could still learn and grow and laugh. That afternoon, when Maria finally left and Kaya made her way back to camp, Nantaje intercepted her. He asked her in Apache about her new friend. Kaya's whole face lit up as she told him about Maria. She talked faster than she had in months, using her hands to show him the braiding pattern she had learned. She hummed the Spanish song. She told him that Maria's hands were kind, that her voice was warm, that she smelled like desert flowers and bread. Nantaje listened to every word, his heart full. That night around the fire, his warriors asked him about his hunting trip. One of them, a sharp-eyed young man named Broken Arrow, said he had seen tracks. White girl tracks coming and going from the stream for 2 days now. The other warriors tensed, reaching for their weapons. They asked if they should go deal with the intruder. Chase her away. Make sure she didn't bring soldiers or settlers to their hidden camp. Nantaje raised his hand for silence. In a calm voice, he told them that he knew about the white girl. He had been watching her. And no, they would not chase her away, not yet. He would continue to watch and decide what should be done. The warriors respected their chief too much to argue. But Nantaje could see the questions in their eyes. Why was he allowing a white person near their camp? Had he gone soft? Was he being foolish? But Nantaje knew something they didn't. He knew that his daughter had smiled more in 2 days with this stranger than she had in the entire past year, and he knew that as a father he would do anything, risk anything to see his daughter happy again. The next morning he was back on the ridge, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, it became a routine. Maria would arrive at dawn. Kaya would come to meet her. They would spend time together, communicating in their own wordless language of gestures and touch and kindness. Nantaje watched as Maria taught Kaya to identify different plants by touch and smell. He watched as Kaya, in turn, showed Maria which desert plants were safe to eat. His daughter, who knew these plants by heart from before she lost her sight, became the teacher. And Maria became the grateful student, learning Apache survival skills without even realizing it. By the 5th day, something had shifted in Nantaje's heart. This wasn't just about his daughter anymore. This white girl, this Maria, was alone and desperate. He could see it in how thin she was getting, how her clothes hung looser each day. She was sharing her food with Kaya even though she was clearly starving. She was sleeping in the open, vulnerable to animals and weather and any passing danger. She was brave and kind and incredibly foolish, and against all his better judgment, against all his years of experience teaching him not to trust white people, Nantaje found himself caring about what happened to her. On the 6th morning, he made a decision. It was time to stop hiding and watching. It was time to find out who this Maria really was and what she wanted. It was time to bring his warriors and confront her properly. If she was a scout or a spy, they would discover it. If she was just a lost, kind girl who had accidentally wandered into their lives, well, they would discover that too. As the sun rose on the 6th day, Nantaje gathered 12 of his best warriors. He told them to come with him to the stream. He told them they would meet the white girl face to face, and he told them that no matter what happened, no one would hurt her unless he gave the command. The warriors followed him down to the canyon, moving silently through the trees. When they arrived at the clearing by the stream, Maria was already there, sitting on her usual rock. And beside her, as always, was Kaya, laughing at something Maria was showing her. Nantaje stepped out from the trees and his warriors followed, surrounding the clearing. He watched as Maria looked up, saw them, and went completely still. The color drained from her face. Her hands started shaking, but she didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood up slowly and moved in front of Kaya, putting herself between the blind girl and the warriors. She was trying to protect his daughter. From him, from his own men, even though she was terrified, even though she was completely outnumbered, her first instinct was to protect the child she had befriended. In that moment, Chief Nantaje knew exactly what kind of person Maria was, and he knew that everything was about to change for all of them. Maria's heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She was surrounded by Apache warriors, all of them armed. all of them staring at her with hard, unreadable faces. She had known this moment would probably come. She just didn't expect it to be today. But even through her terror, Maria kept herself planted firmly in front of Kaya. The little girl had grabbed onto Maria's torn skirt. Confused and frightened by the sudden appearance of so many people, Maria could feel Kaya trembling behind her. The tall warrior in front, the one who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward. He looked at Maria for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. Then he spoke in Apache, his voice deep and commanding. Maria didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. He was asking her something, demanding answers. Maria shook her head helplessly and replied in Spanish that she didn't understand. The warrior frowned and spoke again in Apache, more insistent this time. Again, Maria could only shake her head. They were stuck, unable to communicate, and Maria felt panic rising in her throat. Then one of the younger warriors stepped forward. He looked at the leader, who nodded, and then he spoke to Maria in rough, broken Spanish. His accent was thick and he struggled with the words, but Maria almost cried with relief. At least they could talk now. The warrior translated for his chief. He wants to know who you are, why you are here, what you want from his daughter. His daughter. Maria's eyes widened as she looked back at the tall warrior. This was Kaya's father, the chief. She had been meeting his daughter for 5 days, and he had known all along. He had been watching them. The realization sent chills down her spine, but also, strangely, brought her a small amount of relief. If he had wanted to hurt her, he could have done it days ago. Through the translator, Maria told them everything. She told them about her stepfather's cruelty, about running away, about wandering lost in the desert. She told them she had stumbled upon the stream by accident, dying of thirst. And that's when she met Kaya. She explained that she had shared her food because the little girl was hungry, and she kept coming back because the child seemed lonely. I have no home, Maria said, her voice shaking but honest. I have nobody. I'm not a spy or a scout. I'm just trying to survive. And when I saw your daughter, I saw someone who maybe needed a friend. I know what it's like to be alone and scared. The translator repeated her words in Apache. The warriors muttered among themselves, some looking skeptical, others looking thoughtful. The chief, Kaya's father, remained silent, his face unreadable. Maria held her breath, waiting. Then Kaya did something that changed everything. The little blind girl pushed past Maria and walked forward, her hands outstretched, searching for her father. The chief immediately moved to guide her, and Kaya grabbed his arm. She spoke rapidly in Apache, her young voice urgent and passionate. She was defending Maria. Even though she couldn't see her father's face, she was arguing with him, pulling on his arm, her voice rising with emotion. Maria watched as the stern warrior's face softened while listening to his daughter. Kaya kept talking, occasionally pointing back toward Maria, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. Maria didn't need a translation. She knew Kaya was telling her father about the braiding, the songs, the kindness. She was fighting for her new friend. When Kaya finally finished, there was silence. The chief looked at his daughter's determined face, then back at Maria. He spoke a few words in Apache, his tone gentler now. The translator turned to Maria. The chief says he has been watching you with his daughter. He has seen that you are kind to her, that you share your food even when you have little, that you teach her with patience. The translator paused, then continued. But kindness from a white person is suspicious. Many white people smile while holding knives behind their backs. How does he know you are different? Maria thought about that question carefully. Finally, she said, he doesn't know. I can't prove what's in my heart with words. I can only prove it through my actions, and I've only been here 5 days. But I can tell you this, I love that little girl already. She's the first person in a long time who made me feel like maybe the world isn't completely cruel. If you want me to leave and never come back, I'll go, but I'll miss her every day for the rest of my life. The translator spoke her words in Apache. Several warriors shook their heads, clearly thinking this was foolish. One of them, a young man with a sharp, proud face, spoke up angrily. The translator looked uncomfortable but translated his words too. Broken Arrow says you should be taken as a slave or held for ransom. You are worth something to the white settlers. Why should we trust you when we could profit from you? Before Maria could respond, the chief raised his hand sharply. He spoke one word, firm and final. Broken Arrow scowled but fell silent. The chief then spoke several sentences, his voice measured and thoughtful. Every warrior listened carefully. This was clearly an important speech. The translator turned to Maria, and his expression had changed. He looked almost impressed now. The chief says this: you will be given a test. For 1 moon cycle, 1 month, you will stay with our band. You will help us survive. You will care for Kaya and learn our ways. You will prove through your actions whether you can be trusted. If you succeed, if you show you can live as one of us, you will be adopted into our people. You will become Apache. But if you fail, if you betray us or try to lead soldiers to our camp, you will be cast out into the desert alone, and you will not survive. Do you accept these terms? Maria's mind raced. 1 month, living with the Apache, learning their ways. It was dangerous. It was crazy. But what was her alternative? Wander alone in the desert until she died of thirst or starvation? Try to go back to towns where her stepfather was probably still looking for her? And there was Kaya. Sweet, brave Kaya, who had just stood up for her in front of armed warriors. How could Maria walk away from her now? I accept, Maria said firmly. I'll do whatever you ask. Just please let me stay with Kaya. The translator told the chief, who nodded once. He gave several commands in Apache, and the warriors began to disperse. Some looked pleased, others looked doubtful, and Broken Arrow looked downright angry. But they all obeyed their chief. Kaya rushed back to Maria, her face glowing with happiness. She hugged Maria tightly around the waist, saying something in Apache that Maria was learning to recognize meant friend. Maria hugged her back, tears streaming down her face. She had just agreed to something that could get her killed, but somehow it felt right. The chief approached them and Maria tensed. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Tall and muscular, with scars that told stories of battles survived. But when he looked at his daughter hugging Maria, his stern expression softened just a little. Through the translator, he said, "My name is Nantaje. You will stay in a shelter near mine so I can watch you. You will work hard. You will learn our language. You will not wander. You will not make fires that could be seen. You will help the women with their work. And most importantly, you will care for my daughter. Can you do all of this?" Maria nodded. "Yes, Chief Nantaje. I can do all of that." "Good," the chief said through the translator. Then he added something else, and for the first time the translator smiled as he spoke. "The chief says his daughter has more courage than most of his warriors. She has chosen you as her friend, so he will trust her judgment. Do not make him regret it." "I won't," Maria promised. "I swear I won't." And so began the hardest month of Maria's life. The Apache women hated Maria, or at least that's how it felt during the first 2 weeks. They didn't hit her or yell at her, but they didn't need to. Their cold silence and hard stares said everything. Maria was an outsider, a white girl who had somehow convinced their chief to let her stay. They would make her prove she deserved to be here, or they would make her quit and run away. The work was brutal. Maria woke before dawn and didn't stop until long after dark. The women gave her the hardest, dirtiest tasks. They sent her to dig roots from rocky ground until her fingers bled. They had her tan animal hides, scraping away flesh and brains until the smell made her sick and her hands were raw. They made her carry heavy water containers back and forth from the stream, up steep canyon walls, again and again. Maria's body screamed in pain. Her back ached. Her hands developed blisters that popped and bled and then turned into calluses. Her shoulders burned from carrying heavy loads. She was exhausted every single night, so tired she could barely eat before falling asleep. But she never complained. Not once. She did every task they gave her, no matter how hard. When she didn't understand what they wanted, she watched carefully and learned. When they corrected her harshly in Apache, she nodded and tried again. When they gave her smaller portions of food than everyone else, testing if she would protest, she ate what she was given and said nothing. Maria had survived her stepfather's cruelty. She had learned how to endure pain, how to work through exhaustion, how to stay silent when every part of her wanted to scream. Those terrible years had taught her survival skills she never wanted to learn. But now, ironically, those same skills were saving her life in a completely different way. The only bright part of Maria's days was Kaya. Every evening, no matter how tired she was, Maria spent time with the little girl. She had been given a small shelter next to Chief Nantaje's, and Kaya would come to visit her there. Sometimes they just sat together in comfortable silence. Sometimes Maria taught her new Spanish words and Kaya taught her Apache words in return. Slowly, painfully, they were learning to really talk to each other. Maria created things for Kaya that would help her navigate the world. She carved a walking stick and made notches on it, each notch marking a different path around the camp. She taught Kaya to count her steps, to use sounds and smells to know where she was. She made textured markers that Kaya could feel with her fingers, placing them at important spots around camp so the girl could find her way independently. Chief Nantaje watched all of this. He didn't say much to Maria directly, but she could feel his eyes on her all the time. Watching, judging, deciding if she was trustworthy. It should have made her nervous, but somehow it didn't. She understood he was being protective of his daughter. She would have done the same thing in his position. One night, about 3 weeks into her trial month, something changed. Food had been scarce that week. The hunting hadn't been good, and everyone in camp was eating smaller portions. When Maria received her evening meal, it was barely a handful of food. She looked at it, her stomach growling with hunger, and then she looked at Kaya sitting beside her. The little girl had her own portion, but it wasn't much either. Kaya was thin, too thin for a growing child. Without thinking twice, Maria quietly split her own small portion and added half to Kaya's bowl. "Maria, no," Kaya said in her careful Spanish. She had learned enough words now to have simple conversations. "You need food. You work hard. You need it more," Maria replied in her broken Apache. "You are growing. I am already grown." It wasn't true. Maria was only 17, still growing herself, and she was already weak from weeks of hard labor and not enough food. But she didn't care. Kaya's well-being mattered more than her own hunger. What Maria didn't know was that Chief Nantaje was sitting just outside his shelter, close enough to hear their quiet conversation. He had heard Maria give her food away. Again. It was at least the 4th time she had done this, and each time she thought no one was watching. The chief's throat tightened. This white girl, this outsider, who was being tested and treated harshly by his people, was starving herself to feed his daughter. She wasn't doing it for show or to gain favor. She was doing it because she genuinely loved Kaya. He could see it in every action, every gentle word, every patient moment she spent with his blind daughter. The next morning, Chief Nantaje spoke to the women. Maria didn't know what he said, but suddenly the atmosphere changed. The women were still not friendly, but they stopped giving her the absolute worst tasks. They stopped giving her smaller portions. One older woman even showed her a better way to scrape hides so her hands wouldn't bleed as much. It was a small kindness, but it felt huge to Maria. As the moon cycle continued, Maria began to understand the Apache way of life. She learned that nothing was wasted, that every part of an animal was used with respect. She learned which plants could heal and which could harm. She learned how to move quietly through the desert, how to spot tracks, how to find water in places that looked bone dry. But most importantly, she learned the language. Every day her Apache got a little better. She could now have real conversations with Kaya. She could understand when the women gave her instructions. She could greet people properly and thank them correctly. Language was the bridge between her world and theirs, and she crossed that bridge as fast as she could. Chief Nantaje began to teach her personally sometimes. In the evenings, he would sit with Maria and Kaya, and he would tell stories in Apache. Simple stories at first, speaking slowly so Maria could follow. Stories about coyotes and ravens, about the mountains and stars, about Apache heroes from long ago. Maria listened carefully, asking questions when she didn't understand. Kaya would help translate, proud that she could teach Maria something important. During these evening lessons, Maria saw a different side of the stern chief. He was patient with her struggling Apache. He would repeat words until she got them right. And sometimes, when Kaya laughed at something Maria said incorrectly, the chief would smile too. Small smiles, barely there, but real. The month was almost over when one of the women, a grandmother named Desba, finally spoke to Maria kindly. Desba had been one of the hardest on Maria, always critical, always demanding perfection. But on the 28th day, while they were working together to prepare leather, Desba looked at Maria's calloused, scarred hands and said something in Apache. Maria's language skills were good enough now to understand most of it. Desba had said, "You have the hands of an Apache woman now. You have earned them through work and pain. These are good hands." It was the first true compliment Maria had received from any of the Apache women. Tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them back. She looked at Desba and said in careful Apache, "Thank you, grandmother. I am honored." Desba nodded approvingly. "You learn fast. You work hard. You love the chief's daughter like she is your own sister. These are Apache ways. Maybe you are becoming one of us after all." That night was the last night of Maria's testing month. She lay in her small shelter, looking up at the stars through the gaps in the roof, and thought about everything that had happened. A month ago, she had been a desperate, starving girl running from a cruel stepfather. Now she was tanned and strong, calloused and capable. She could speak Apache well enough to have conversations. She knew survival skills that would keep her alive in this harsh desert. And most importantly, she had Kaya. She had found a little sister she never knew she needed. Tomorrow, Chief Nantaje would announce his decision. Would Maria be accepted as one of them? Or would she be cast out? Maria fell asleep praying to her mother's God and to the Apache spirits both. She prayed that she had done enough, that she had proven herself worthy. Because leaving this place, leaving Kaya, would break her heart into pieces. In his own shelter, Chief Nantaje wasn't sleeping either. He was thinking about the white girl who had become so much more than a white girl. He was thinking about how his daughter laughed again, how she walked confidently now with her special marked stick, how she was learning and growing instead of hiding and fearing. He was thinking about Maria's bleeding hands and her quiet strength. He was thinking about how she never gave up even when the work was crushing. He was thinking about how she gave away her food to feed his daughter, not once, but many times. The decision should have been hard, but it wasn't hard at all. The hard part would be what came next. The morning of the 30th day, Chief Nantaje called everyone in the band together. This was formal, Maria realized with a racing heart. This was her judgment day. She stood in the center of the gathering, trying to look braver than she felt. Kaya stood beside her, holding her hand tightly. The little girl was scared too, Maria could tell. Kaya had been teaching her all night how to say the right things, how to show proper respect to the council. There were only 43 people in Chief Nantaje's band. It was a small group. Families who had refused to go to the reservations, who had chosen freedom in the hidden canyons over safety and food in captivity. Maria had learned their stories over the past month. Each person here had given up so much to remain free, and now they had to decide if a white girl could be trusted with their freedom, with the location of their camp, with their very lives. Chief Nantaje stood before them all, and when he spoke, his voice carried authority. Maria's Apache was good enough now to understand most of what he said. He talked about how Maria had come to them, how she had befriended Kaya, how he had tested her for a full month. He talked about her hard work, her respect, her willingness to learn their ways. Then he did something that surprised Maria. He asked others to speak, to share their opinions of her, to vote on whether she should stay or go. Grandmother Desba spoke first. In her cracking elderly voice she said, "This girl works like she was born to it. She does not complain. She does not quit. She learns our language faster than any outsider I have ever seen. I vote she stays." Another woman spoke next, one who had been particularly harsh to Maria during the testing month. She gave food to the chief's daughter when she herself was starving. She cares more about our children than about herself. This is Apache way. I vote she stays. One by one, the women spoke. Most voted for Maria to stay. A few abstained, saying they needed more time to be sure. But none voted against her. Maria felt hope rising in her chest like a bird taking flight. Then the men began to speak. Some of the older warriors spoke in favor of Maria, impressed by her endurance and her respect for their ways. But Broken Arrow, the young warrior who had wanted to take her for ransom, stood up with anger in his eyes. "Yes, she works hard," he said in harsh Apache. "Yes, she has learned our language. Yes, she is kind to the chief's daughter. But she is still white. Her people are trying to destroy us. They hunt us like animals. They put our brothers and sisters on reservations where they starve and die. How do we know she will not betray us? How do we know she will not lead soldiers here when she gets the chance? One girl's kindness does not erase generations of white treachery. Silence fell over the gathering. Broken Arrow's words carried weight because they were true. The Apache had been betrayed by white people again and again. Treaties broken, promises shattered, families destroyed. Why should Maria be different? Maria's heart sank. She wanted to defend herself, to promise she would never betray them. But she knew Broken Arrow was right to be suspicious. She couldn't prove the future. She could only show them her heart right now in this moment. Kaya suddenly pulled away from Maria's hand. The little blind girl walked forward, her hands outstretched, searching for her father. Chief Nantaje guided her to stand beside him, and Kaya turned to face the gathering. When she spoke, her young voice was clear and strong. "I cannot see," Kaya said in Apache, "but I can feel truth. I can hear truth." Maria's hands are gentle. Her voice is honest. Her heart is good. She could have left us many times in the past month. When the work was hard, she could have run away in the night. When she was hungry, she could have stolen food. When she learned where our camp was hidden, she could have told soldiers, but she did none of these things. She stayed. She worked. She shared. She became my sister. If you send her away, you send away part of my heart. Tears were streaming down the little girl's face now, but her voice never wavered. My mother died. I lost my sight. I thought I lost everything good in the world. But then Maria came. She gave me hope again. She taught me I can still be strong even though I cannot see. Please do not take her away from me, please. The gathering was completely silent. Maria was crying too now, unable to stop the tears. Several of the women were wiping their eyes. Even some of the warriors looked moved by Kaya's speech. Chief Nantaje put his hand on his daughter's shoulder, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. My daughter speaks wisdom beyond her years. I have watched Maria every day for a month. I have seen her when she thought no one was looking. I have heard her when she thought no one was listening. And I have never, not once, seen her do anything that would make me doubt her heart. He paused, then continued. But Broken Arrow's concerns are also wise. We cannot ignore history. We cannot forget what white people have done to our nation. So I propose this. Maria has passed her test. She has earned the right to stay with us. But to truly make her one of us, to bind her to our people in a way that can never be broken, I will offer something more. The chief took a deep breath, and Maria could see him gathering courage for what he was about to say. I will offer a bride price for Maria. I will adopt her into my family through marriage tradition. Not as a wife in the way of man and woman, but as a member of my clan who shares my protection and my name. She will become Maria Nantaje. She will be officially recognized as Kaya's older sister, and anyone who harms her will answer to me and to all our allied clans. Gasps rose from the gathering. This was huge. Enormous. A bride price meant Maria would be under the chief's direct protection. She would officially be Apache. But the amount of the bride price would show everyone how much value Chief Nantaje placed on her. The bride price I offer, the chief continued, his voice growing stronger, is 999 horses. Shocked silence. Then chaos. Everyone started talking at once. 999 horses. That was insane. That was the largest bride price anyone had ever heard of in all of Apache history. That was a price worthy of a princess, of a great warrior's daughter, of someone of incredible value. Broken Arrow jumped to his feet. We do not have 999 horses. We barely have 50 horses in our entire band. This is impossible. Chief Nantaje looked at him calmly. I did not say we have them. I said that is my offer. I will call upon every alliance, every debt owed to my family, every clan that respects our name. I will gather these horses. It may take weeks or months, but I will do it. And when I do, the message will be clear to everyone. Maria is under my protection. She is worth more than gold or silver. She is family, and anyone who threatens her threatens me. He turned to look at Maria, and his stern face softened. The bride price is not really about horses. It is about showing you and showing everyone else that the kindness you showed my daughter when she was lost and blind and alone is worth more than any treasure in this world. You gave her hope when I could not. You gave her joy when I had run out of ways to try. That is priceless, and I will make sure the entire territory knows it. Maria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 999 horses. For her, a runaway girl with nothing, a white girl who had stumbled into their lives by accident. He was saying she was valuable. He was saying she belonged. He was saying she was worth protecting with everything he had. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed. Chief Nantaje, I do not deserve this. I only did what anyone with a kind heart would do. Exactly, the chief replied. You did what anyone with a kind heart would do. But most people do not have kind hearts. You do. That makes you rare. That makes you precious. That makes you worth 999 horses. Kaya ran to Maria and hugged her, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. The women began to sing, a traditional song of welcome and celebration. Even the skeptical warriors seemed impressed by their chief's bold declaration, though Broken Arrow still looked doubtful. But Maria barely heard any of it. All she could think was that a month ago she was alone and unwanted, and now she had a father, a sister, and a people who were willing to move heaven and earth to claim her as their own. Now Chief Nantaje just had to find 999 horses, and that would be a challenge unlike anything he had ever faced. For 2 weeks after Chief Nantaje announced the bride price, life in the camp felt almost magical. Maria was accepted now, truly accepted. The women taught her songs and stories. The children played with her. Even some of the warriors who had been cold to her before started greeting her respectfully. She was becoming Apache day by day, word by word, tradition by tradition. Kaya was happier than Maria had ever seen her. The little girl followed Maria everywhere, chattering in a mix of Apache and Spanish, teaching and learning in equal measure. At night, they would sit outside their shelters and Kaya would point out star patterns she remembered from before she lost her sight, and Maria would describe them so Kaya could see them in her memory again. Chief Nantaje had sent out messengers to other Apache bands, calling in old favors, reaching out to distant relatives, asking for help in gathering the bride price. The response had been slow at first, but word was spreading. The story of the white girl who befriended a blind Apache child was traveling across the territory, carried by scouts and traders and wandering families. Then everything changed in a single morning. A scout came running into camp, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. He had news, and it wasn't good. The United States Cavalry had a new commander in the region, a harsh man who was determined to round up all the remaining free Apache bands. Patrols had increased. They were searching canyons and valleys, pushing deeper into Apache territory than they had in months. Worse, the scout had heard something at a trading post. There was a man offering a reward for information about a missing girl. A white man with a mean face and cruel eyes, asking about a 17-year-old girl who had run away. He had a photograph. He was showing it to everyone, and he was offering good money to anyone who could tell him where she was. Maria's blood turned to ice when she heard this. Her stepfather, he was still looking for her. She had hoped he would give up, would decide she wasn't worth the trouble. But she should have known better. He was a man who hated losing, who saw her as his property, and he would never stop looking. The timing couldn't have been worse. There was a cavalry patrol searching for Apache bands at the same time Maria's stepfather was searching for her. Two separate threats moving through the same territory, both dangerous in different ways. Chief Nantaje called an emergency council. The situation was discussed in rapid, worried Apache. Maria understood enough to know how serious it was. They could move deeper into the mountains away from both threats, but that would mean leaving their water source. In the middle of summer, that could be deadly. They could stay and hide, hoping both dangers would pass by. But if they were discovered, they would be trapped in this canyon with no escape route. Or they could split up, scatter in different directions and hope to reunite later. But splitting up meant vulnerability, especially for the women and children. Broken Arrow argued loudly that this was exactly what he had warned about. The white girl had brought attention to them. Maybe she hadn't meant to, but trouble had followed her here like a shadow. Some of the other warriors nodded in agreement. The looks they gave Maria were no longer friendly. They were angry, scared, and looking for someone to blame. Maria felt sick with guilt. Broken Arrow was right. She had brought danger to these people who had shown her nothing but kindness after the testing month. Her stepfather's search, her very existence as a white runaway, had put everyone at risk. That night, Maria made a decision. She couldn't let these people suffer because of her. She couldn't let Kaya lose her home, maybe even lose her father if the cavalry found them and there was fighting. She had to leave. She had to draw both threats away from the camp. She waited until everyone was asleep, then quietly packed her few belongings. She left behind the Apache clothes they had given her, and put on her old torn dress, the one she had arrived in. She wanted to look like a lost white girl again, not like someone connected to the Apache. She wrote a note in Spanish, hoping someone who could read it would eventually translate it for Chief Nantaje and Kaya. She explained what she was doing and why. She thanked them for everything. She told Kaya she loved her like a true sister. Then Maria slipped out of camp, moving as silently as the Apache had taught her. Heading away from the hidden canyon, she had barely made it half a mile when a hand grabbed her shoulder. Maria spun around, her heart in her throat, and found herself face to face with Chief Nantaje. He was alone, fully armed, and his face was harder than she had ever seen it. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her with those dark, penetrating eyes. Finally, in Apache, he said, "You were running away." "I was drawing the danger away from you," Maria replied in Apache, her voice shaking. "My stepfather is looking for me. The cavalry is looking for you. If I leave, maybe both threats will follow me away from your people. Kaya will be safe. You will be safe. And you will die," Chief Nantaje said flatly. "Alone in the desert with no water, no food, no weapons. Your stepfather will find you or the desert will kill you. Either way, you will die." "Maybe," Maria admitted, "but at least you and Kaya will be safe. That's what matters." The chief stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something completely unexpected. He sat down on a rock and gestured for her to sit beside him. Confused, Maria sat. "Let me tell you about Apache honor," Chief Nantaje said quietly. "When we claim someone as family, we do not abandon them when trouble comes. We do not throw them away to save ourselves. We stand together. We fight together. We survive together or we fall together. That is what it means to be Apache." "But I'm not really Apache," Maria whispered. "I'm just a white girl who you've been kind to." "No," the chief said firmly. "You are Maria Nantaje. I offered a bride price of 999 horses for you." "Do you know what that means?" "It means I have publicly declared that you are under my protection, that you are part of my family, that anyone who harms you is my enemy. I cannot take that back without destroying my honor and my family's name." He turned to look at her fully. "More than that, I do not want to take it back. My daughter loves you. You have brought light back into her life. You have shown courage and strength and loyalty. You have earned your place with us, and we do not throw away family when times get hard." Maria felt tears streaming down her face. "But what can we do? The cavalry is searching. My stepfather is searching. How can we protect everyone?" Chief Nantaje was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said something that shocked Maria to her core. "We finish gathering the bride price. We gather the 999 horses, and we let everyone see them." "I don't understand," Maria said, confused. A slight smile crossed the chief's stern face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just thought of a very clever and very dangerous plan. 999 horses is not just a bride price," he explained. "It is a gathering. It is a statement. When other Apache bands come to deliver horses, they bring warriors. They bring strength. They bring numbers. Your stepfather is one man with a gun. The cavalry patrol is maybe 30 soldiers. But if we gather enough allied clans, if we show enough strength, both threats will think twice." He stood up and offered his hand to Maria. "We do not run and hide. We stand our ground. We show the world that Maria Nantaje is claimed by the Apache people, and anyone who tries to take her away will have to face all of us. Let them come if they dare." Maria took his hand and stood, her heart pounding. "You would risk war with the cavalry? For me?" "I would risk anything for family," Chief Nantaje said simply. "And you are family now. Besides, the cavalry does not want war either. They want to push us onto reservations, yes. But they do not want a major battle if they can avoid it. If we show strength, they will move on to easier targets. And my stepfather? Your stepfather is a bully who picks on helpless girls. He will not be so brave when facing Apache warriors. We will make sure he understands that you are no longer helpless, no longer alone, and no longer his to claim." They walked back to camp together, and Maria felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died. She felt protected. She felt like she had someone strong standing between her and the dangers of the world. But gathering 999 horses and the warriors who would come with them, that was going to take a miracle, and they were running out of time. The first horses arrived 3 days after Chief Nantaje's messengers went out with the urgent call. A small band of Mescalero Apache from the north brought 15 horses. a generous gift from a chief whose life Nantaje had saved years ago in a battle. The warriors who brought them stayed, setting up camp nearby. They had heard about the threats facing Nantaje's band, and they would not leave until the danger passed. Then came more. A Lipan clan from the east arrived with 20 horses and 12 warriors. They remembered how Nantaje had shared food with them during a terrible winter, when their own supplies ran out. They came to repay that debt. Every few days more horses arrived, sometimes just 5 or 6 from a small family group, sometimes 30 or 40 from a larger band. With each group came warriors, women, and children. The hidden canyon began to fill with life, with noise, with the smell of cook fires and the sound of many languages mixing together. Maria watched in amazement as the gathering grew. She had never imagined that Chief Nantaje had so many connections, so many allies spread across the territory. These people were coming from days and weeks of travel away, all because he had called for help. All because of the bride price he had offered for her. The story was spreading too. Maria would overhear conversations around the fires at night. Warriors telling the tale of the white girl who befriended a blind Apache child, who worked herself to exhaustion to prove her worth, who shared her food when she was starving. The story grew with each telling, becoming legend. Some parts were exaggerated, Maria knew, but the heart of it remained true. Kaya was thriving in the midst of all this activity. With so many people around, she had new friends, new teachers, new songs to learn. She would lead Maria through the expanded camp, proud to introduce her to each new group that arrived. "This is my sister, Maria," she would say in Apache, and Maria's heart would swell each time she heard it. Chief Nantaje kept count of every horse that arrived. He marked them carefully, tracking which clan gave what, ensuring that debts were properly recorded. By the end of the second week, they had over 400 horses. By the end of the third week, they had 700. The number was growing, but so was the tension. Scouts reported that the cavalry patrol was still in the area, and Maria's stepfather had been spotted at a settlement only 2 days' ride away. Then something unexpected happened. 2 Navajo clans arrived with 50 horses between them. The Navajo and Apache had not always been friends. There had been conflicts, disagreements, territorial disputes, but the Navajo chiefs had heard the story, and they respected Nantaje's reputation as a fair and honorable leader. They came to show solidarity, to demonstrate that different peoples could stand together against outside threats. With the Navajo horses, the count reached 873. So close, but time was running out. The scouts reported that the cavalry was getting more aggressive, searching canyons more systematically. And Maria's stepfather had apparently hired 2 rough men to help him search. He was getting serious, getting desperate. On the 21st day of gathering, a scout came racing into camp with urgent news. The cavalry patrol had spotted the gathering. They had seen the huge number of horses, the many shelters, the dozens of warriors, and they had sent for reinforcements. The camp erupted in worried discussion. Some warriors wanted to scatter immediately before the cavalry arrived in force. Others wanted to prepare for battle. Women began packing essentials, ready to flee if necessary. Children sensed the adult fear and became quiet and clingy. Chief Nantaje stood in the center of the camp and raised his hand for silence. When everyone quieted, he spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the gathering. "We do not run," he said, "and we do not fight unless forced. We show strength. We show unity. We show that we are not a small band hiding in fear, but a gathering of many people standing together. The cavalry does not want a major battle. It would be too costly for them. But they need to see that attacking us would indeed be very costly." He turned to his most trusted warriors. "Send a message to the cavalry commander. Tell him we are gathered here for a peaceful purpose, a wedding ceremony and bride price gathering. Tell him we have no intention of raiding or attacking settlements. Tell him we will disperse when our ceremony is complete in just a few more days. But also tell him that we have 300 warriors here from many clans, all well armed, all prepared to defend themselves if attacked." It was a gamble. The message could provoke the cavalry into attacking immediately, or it could make them pause and reconsider. Everything depended on whether the cavalry commander was a warmonger or a practical man. 2 days of terrible tension followed. The cavalry gathered their reinforcements, building their forces to over 100 soldiers while the Apache warriors prepared defenses around the canyon. Maria felt sick with guilt, knowing that all of this was happening because of her. If people died in a battle, it would be her fault. But Kaya held her hand and said, This is not about you anymore. This is about all of us, about our right to live free, about our right to hold our ceremonies and follow our traditions. You are just the reason we are finally standing together." On the third day, the cavalry commander sent his response. He would not attack if the gathering remained peaceful and dispersed within 1 week. He was a practical man who understood that a battle with 300 Apache warriors would result in heavy casualties on both sides, and his superiors would not reward him for starting an unnecessary war. But he warned that if any raids occurred, if any settlers were attacked, he would consider it an act of war and respond with full force. Chief Nantaje agreed to the terms. 1 week. They had 1 week to finish the gathering, complete the ceremony, and send everyone safely home. The pressure was on. They needed 126 more horses to reach 999. The messengers rode out again, this time with urgent appeals to every remaining contact, every possible source. And somehow, miraculously, the horses came. A wealthy Apache trader gave 15 horses he had been saving for his own daughter's bride price. A mixed band of Apache and Mexican families who lived in the borderlands sent 20 horses, saying they honored what Maria represented, the possibility of different peoples living together peacefully. Small families gave 1 or 2 horses each, all they could spare because the story had touched them. On the 6th day, with only 1 day left before they had to disperse, a final group arrived. It was led by an ancient Apache man, a respected elder who rode despite his age and frail health. He brought 30 horses from his extended family, and with them came the final piece of the story Maria hadn't known. The old man had known Chief Nantaje's father. Years ago, when the old man's family was starving, Nantaje's father had shared his last food with them, saving their lives. The old man had always wanted to repay that debt, but Nantaje's father had died before he could. Now he said, by giving these horses for Nantaje's adopted daughter, he was finally repaying the debt of kindness shown to him decades ago. The circle was complete. Kindness repaying kindness across generations. With those 30 horses, plus 12 more that came in that final afternoon from various small sources, the count reached exactly 999 horses. The impossible had been accomplished. The bride price was gathered. That evening, as the sun set over the canyon painting everything gold and red, Chief Nantaje stood with Maria and Kaya and looked out over the vast herd of horses. Animals of every color, brown and black and gray and spotted, stretching across the valley like a living river. Warriors and families from dozens of clans stood among them, united in purpose. Tomorrow, Chief Nantaje said quietly, we will hold the ceremony. You will officially become Maria Nantaje. You will officially be Apache, and everyone here will witness it. The cavalry will know it. Your stepfather will hear about it, and no one will ever be able to say again that you are alone or unprotected. Maria couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight with emotion. She just nodded and held Kaya's hand tighter. 999 horses, not because she was worth that much, but because kindness was worth that much, because love was worth that much, because standing together against cruelty and injustice was worth everything they had. The thunder of 1,000 hooves had drawn every enemy's attention. But it had also drawn something more powerful. It had drawn family, allies, and proof that one person's kindness could change the world. The ceremony began at dawn, as Apache tradition demanded. The entire gathering assembled, hundreds of people forming a great circle around the center of the canyon. The 999 horses were arranged in smaller groups nearby, a visible testament to what this day meant. Maria wore clothing made specially for this occasion. The Apache women had worked together for days, creating a dress that blended her Spanish heritage with Apache tradition. It was deerskin, soft and beautifully decorated with beadwork and quillwork in patterns that told a story. The pattern showed a long journey, a meeting of 2 paths, and the joining of 2 worlds. She wore her mother's silver cross alongside Apache symbols blessed by the band's medicine woman. Kaya stood beside her, dressed in her own ceremonial clothing, beaming with pride. The little girl's confidence had grown so much over the past months. She stood tall and sure, her hand in Maria's, ready to officially become sisters not just in heart, but in name. Chief Nantaje stepped forward, wearing the regalia of his office. He looked every inch the powerful leader he was, commanding respect from every person present. When he spoke, his voice carried across the canyon strong and clear. He spoke in Apache, but Maria understood every word now. He told the story of how they met, how Maria had shared her bread with his blind daughter when she herself was starving. He told of her trial month, her hard work, her refusal to quit no matter how difficult the tasks. He told of how she had brought light back into Kaya's life, how she had taught his daughter to be brave again. Then he spoke of the bride price. 999 horses, he said, representing the value of a single act of kindness multiplied across many clans and many hearts. The horses were not payment for a person, he explained, but a statement, a declaration that kindness has value beyond measure, that compassion is wealth greater than gold, that one person's courage to love across differences can unite peoples and change lives. The medicine woman came forward and performed the traditional blessings. She burned sacred herbs, speaking prayers to the spirits of the land and sky. She placed marks on Maria's forehead and on Kaya's, symbols of sisterhood. She tied a cord around both girls' wrists, binding them as family in the eyes of all present. Then came the moment when Maria had to speak. Her voice shook at first, but as she continued, it grew stronger. She spoke in Apache, the language she had worked so hard to learn. I came to this land running from cruelty, she said. I expected to find death in the desert. Instead, I found life. I found a little girl who needed a friend, and I found that I needed one too. I found a people who valued hard work and honor. I found a chief who taught me that real strength is protecting those weaker than yourself. I found a family who showed me that family is not always about blood. Sometimes family is about choice, about loyalty, about standing together when the world is hard. She turned to Chief Nantaje. You offered 999 horses for me. But the truth is, I would have stayed for free. I would have worked for nothing because what you and Kaya gave me is worth more than any bride price. You gave me hope. You gave me belonging. You gave me a reason to believe that the world has good people in it. Then she turned to Kaya. Little sister, you taught me how to see with more than just eyes. You taught me to listen, to feel, to understand the world in ways I never knew before. You are the bravest person I know. Thank you for choosing me as your friend. I promise I will be your sister for the rest of my life. By the time Maria finished speaking, there were tears on many faces. Even some of the hardest warriors were wiping their eyes. The medicine woman declared the ceremony complete, and the gathering erupted in celebration. There was singing and drumming, dancing and feasting. The different clans shared food and stories, cementing bonds that would last for generations. Chief Nantaje took Maria aside for a private moment during the celebration. I am keeping 20 of the horses for our band, he told her. We need them for mobility and survival, but the rest I am giving back to the clans who brought them. I am transforming this bride price into a web of renewed alliances. Maria looked confused. But the whole point was to gather them. No, the chief said with a slight smile. The point was to show that we could gather them, to show unity, to show strength. Now, by giving them back as gifts, I am strengthening the bonds between all our peoples. Each clan will remember that they came here for my daughter, for you. They will remember that we stood together, and if any of them face trouble in the future, others will come to help them, just as they came to help us. Maria understood. The 999 horses were never really about accumulating wealth. They were about creating something far more valuable, a network of mutual support, a demonstration of unity, a proof that Apache bands could still stand together even as the modern world tried to tear them apart. The celebration lasted 3 days. During that time, something important happened. A small group of cavalry soldiers appeared at the edge of the canyon. They didn't come to fight. They came to observe, to see this gathering with their own eyes. And what they saw made them uncomfortable in the best possible way. They saw hundreds of people from many different clans all peacefully gathered together. They saw organization, strength, and unity. They saw warriors, yes, but also families, elders, children. They saw people who were not defeated or desperate, but proud and strong. It was a reminder that the Apache were still a force to be respected, not just a problem to be eliminated. The cavalry commander himself came on the final day, under a flag of truce. He spoke with Chief Nantaje through a translator. The conversation was tense, but respectful. The commander acknowledged that he had seen no hostile actions, no raids, no attacks. He stated that as long as the gathering dispersed peacefully, he would report back that the situation was resolved without need for military action. But there was one more thing. The commander mentioned that there had been a white man in the area, searching for a runaway girl. He said this man had heard about the gathering, heard about the Apache chief who claimed a white girl as his daughter, and had wisely decided to leave the territory. The commander suggested with a meaningful look that any white man foolish enough to try claiming an Apache chief's adopted daughter would likely face consequences, and the military would not intervene in such tribal matters. It was as close to an official recognition of Maria's new status as they would get. Her stepfather had been scared away. The cavalry had backed down. Maria was safe. As the gathering began to disperse, as the clans started their journeys back to their own territories, there were many emotional goodbyes. Warriors who had come as strangers left as friends. Children who had played together for 3 days cried at being separated. Families promised to meet again to help each other, to remember this time when many became one. Grandmother Desba pulled Maria aside before her clan left. The old woman took Maria's scarred, calloused hands in her own and said, "You have become a true Apache woman. Not because you learned our language or our skills, though you did learn those, but because you understand what matters most: loyalty, courage, and putting others before yourself. Your children will be Apache. Your children's children will be Apache. You are the bridge between worlds, and that is a sacred responsibility." Maria hugged the old woman tightly, thanking her for her harsh teachings during the trial month. Desba laughed and said the harshness had been necessary. "I had to make sure you were strong enough. Soft people do not survive out here. You proved you were not soft." When the last of the visiting clans had departed, taking most of the horses with them as gifts, Chief Nantaje's band was left with their original canyon, their permanent home. But everything felt different now. They were not alone. They were part of something larger, a network of support and mutual aid that stretched across the territory. Life settled into a new normal. Maria, now officially Maria Nantaje, continued to learn and grow. She became skilled in all the work of Apache women. She learned healing herbs from the medicine woman. She learned storytelling from the elders. She learned tracking from the warriors who saw her potential and didn't care that she had been born white. But her most important work remained with Kaya. As the months passed, Maria developed new ways to help her little sister navigate the world. She created textured maps that Kaya could read with her fingers, raised patterns showing the paths through the canyon, the location of important landmarks, the safe routes and the dangerous ones. She taught Kaya to use sound and echo to sense spaces, to judge distances by counting heartbeats while walking, to identify people by the unique pattern of their footsteps. Kaya bloomed under this teaching. The fearful, withdrawn child who had clung to her father's side was gone. In her place was a confident young girl who moved through camp independently, who helped with chores, who even began teaching younger children some of the special techniques Maria had shared with her. The other children learned to describe things more vividly because Kaya couldn't see them. They learned patience because rushing made Kaya stumble. They learned empathy because they understood what it meant to navigate a world differently. Years passed in the canyon. Maria grew from a 17-year-old runaway into a young woman of wisdom and strength.